In our first tutorial for a lower third, we created a simple lower third that just comes in and animates out when we hit the continue button. There's one stop point on it. There's 3 containers, 2 of which are a rectangle and 1 of them which is a text. So it's a pretty simple lower third. This next lower third that we're going to create is going to be a little bit more complicated and take it 2 steps further, in that we're going to have a looping animation and an animating text. So first I'm going to create a new scene here, and let's call this like L3_2 or something. You can call it whatever you want. I'm going to open up this scene by double clicking on it. The first thing I'm going to do is just drag a group down, and then I'm going to go into my built-ins and I'm going to use a primitive here to start building my lower third. So I'm going to use a Nagi. So I'm going to drag a Nagi down. I'm going to click on the Nagi editor and go into the width, and I'm going to change the width to about 500. I'm going to change the height to about 50, and I'm going to change my bevel of each corner down to 0. Then I'm going to come down here and turn on my title area and my safe area, and I'm going to move my Nagi or lower third down to the marker there. Now next thing I want to do is texture it, so I'm going to go into my images folder and choose an image that I want to drag onto this Nagi. I'm just going to use this Reflect 4 image. I'm going to click on this and go into the image editor. I'm going to set the mapping to reflection. And what I'm going to do is just try to line this up here, because ultimately we want this texture to loop. So on my position X, I'm just going to set a variable here. I'm going to set a keyframe, and then I'm just going to move my position X over here into a point where I think it's at a good loop point. I'm going to set another keyframe. Now I want to loop this, so I want to go into the stage and loop it. And 2 ways I can do that. I can click the stage button or just click on this anim button within the container. It takes us into the stage. So I'm going to slow this down a little bit and drag my keyframe out. I'm also going to set it to linear. So I'm going to select my first keyframe and set it linear left and right. I'm going to select my first keyframe and also select linear left and right. To access the loop container, I'm going to click on my position X, or I could also click in the blue bar between my keyframes and we get this loop box here. I'm going to turn on the loop out button, and I'm also going to set it to infinity. So now it's going to loop forever. And within the stage here, if I zoom out a little bit by using our Z and X keys, we can zoom in or out. You can see that behind our animation are these stroked lines. That's telling us that this animation is now looped. So when I hit play, you can see that it slowly starts to move. And if I want to check this loop point, I'm going to move my timeline bar out near the last keyframe, and I'm just going to hit continue, and this will show us that loop point. And you can see it's off a little bit, so if I needed to come back and adjust this, I can come in here and experiment with these other values here and just see about where we are. This is something you can always come back and tweak at some point. If you want to work right in the stage, you can highlight this keyframe and then just make adjustments right on this value to get that loop point right on. So I'm just going to copy this Nagi here, and I'm going to go into the Nagi editor, and this time I want to just make it an outline. So the Nagi is one of the only primitives that you can do this with without using the expert, in that it has its own outline. And if we want to turn on this outline, there is an option here for geometry type, and I just turn that to outline. And I have this image on it right now, so it's matching that one, and you can't really see it. So I'm going to get rid of the animation on that particular Nagi, and I'm also going to add a material here. So if I go into my materials, I'm just going to make that a little bit bluer, and coming back into the Nagi, and we can increase the outline width on that as well. So I turn my bounding box off. We can see that we now have a stroked line around our Nagi. So now I want to add some text to this, so I'm going to go into my font folder or my server and find a font to use. So I'm just going to use Arial Bold here. I'm going to drag this down, and I'm just going to position this on top of my Nagi lower third, and I'm going to move it out in Z position just so that we make sure that it's in front of the lower third or the Nagi, because the Nagi is actually on the 0 Z plane. Since both Nagis are on the 0 Z plane, I just want to move this out to the 1 so that there is no intersection. So I want to see the font a little bit better. I'm going to drag a material on this one as well. We'll just use this dark blue, and maybe we'll darken it up a little bit just by going into the material editor and making it a little bit more dark. Now I also want to animate this font on and the lower third, so I could do this together. If I use this whole group, I could just select the group and move these things all together, but I'm going to do it separately. So this means I'm going to drag these 2 Nagis into a new group, and I have them both highlighted. I can just come up into these group option here and click on that and it groups these automatically. So now I'm going to use this group to animate in my Nagis. And we're just going to do the same thing as the earlier tutorial. We're just going to make it come in from the left hand side here. So we want it to start right there. I'm going to rewind my timeline to 0. I'm going to set a keyframe and I'm going to bring it in here. And we could set a keyframe right here for it to stop, but I'm just going to keep on going over to the right here and just set a keyframe that way. So when we hit play, it actually comes all the way through. Now we're going to make that stop with a stop point in the stage, but first I want to animate on my text container. So I'm going to go into built-ins and the FP tab, and down here onto the text effects folder, I'm going to use one of these text effects to animate on this font. And we'll just use something here like the single scale. So I'm just going to drag this down, and you can see when we drag that down, the font disappears. It's because this progress percentage is at 0. I'm going to rewind my timeline. I'm going to set a keyframe at progress percentage 0. I'm going to increase my progress percentage to 100, and then I'm going to set another keyframe. So when I hit play here, you can see that our font scales up with the animation, and our lower third just goes off to the right. So now I need to add my stop points. I'm going to go into the stage, and I want to zoom in a little bit, so I'm just going to use the Z key here to zoom in. And to position the stage anywhere you want, you just hold down the middle scroll button on your mouse, and you can move this stage around. So now I need to set a stop point, and so what I'm going to do is just move my red timeline bar here to where I want our lower third to stop. So this looks pretty good. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more here. So let's move it to 0.5 seconds, and this is where I want it to stop. So I'm going to highlight my director, and once I do that, this little stop point button becomes active. Wherever our red timeline bar is, this is where it's going to add the stop point. So I'm going to click on the stop point, and you can see now it creates this little blue triangle with a black line that goes down through each animation. So when we hit play now, it comes on, and we have a problem because this text is only halfway there. So we have to fix that. But when I hit continue, you can see that the lower third or the Nagis go out, but the text continues to stay there. So we need to make some adjustments here. And first, what we will need to do is adjust some timing. So I'm going to work with the text animation first. I'm going to click on my Arial bold here, and I'm just going to move my second keyframe before that stop point. Now I also want this text to animate out, so I'm just going to hold down C and copy the second keyframe. I'm also going to hold down C and copy the first keyframe and drag this right. So now when I come over and hit play, the text comes in. It's already revealed by the time the lower third stops, and when I want to take it out, I hit continue and it goes. Now the only other problem that we have here is when we hit play and the lower third is stopped, you see that our texture animation has stopped too. So I want this texture animation to keep going or looping while it's sitting here on the screen. And to do that, we need to divide out our animations here within the stage. You can see how this black line of the stop point, it affects every animation here. So this Nagi texture position X, which is looping, this black line is affecting that. So what I'm going to do is create a new director, and I'm going to use this little D button up here. I can click or I can drag, so I'm just going to drag it down. We can right click if we want to rename it, and I'm going to call this loop. And what I'm going to do is take my Nagi, it has the texture and the position X animation on it. I'm going to drag this into this loop director. And now you can see this stop point is only affecting the default director. The black line only extends down into this director and not into this loop director. So when you're working with multiple directors and you're working right within the stage, one thing you need to be careful about is this button right to the right of the trash can. And if you click on it, it gives you all the directors within the scene. And if you're in the stage working, it's automatically going to highlight these directors. So whichever one we were working on within the stage or had highlighted, it automatically highlights it within this box. We want to set this to all, so it's going to select both directors, and that means when we hit play on the timeline, it's going to play both directors together and not just one individually. So I'm going to close out that box, and there's a little small gray box right to the right of the all, which you can turn on or off. Now this is disabled, so it's always going to stay on all. When I hit play now, you can see that our lower third comes in. It's now looping. The texture in the back is looping. Our text is revealed in the right time, and when we hit continue, this lower third should go off and the text should go off as well. Now, if you needed to adjust any timing, you just come back into the stage and you adjust the timing of everything. If we wanted to make this text come on or go off a little bit faster or slower, we could adjust this within the stage directly. We hit play again, it comes on a little bit faster. We hit continue, goes out a little bit faster.